Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, dear students. Uh, During our course at the faculty, we discussed the major features of the Victorian age or the 19th century as a whole. First of all, I'm going to revise these features, point out these features to you. The first feature of the literature of the Victorian age, we find that on page number 4 of our course book, page number 4, number 1 of the features is the Victorian authors tend to give idealized portraits of the life represented in their works or novels. On the same page, page number 4, feature number 2 is the characters are expected to respect high standards of morality and decency. Number 3 on page number 5, the most Victorian writers strove for realism in their fiction, and we have already discussed the difference between realism and romanticism. So, number 3, most Victorian writers strove for realism in their fiction. Number 4 on the same page, page number 5, feature number 4. Right? Okay? The representation of great social reforms. Great social reforms. Number 5, and the final one, indeed, it is on page number 6. Write down this, please. Number 5, the description of the new social class of entrepreneurs. The description of the new social class of entrepreneurs. Of course, the word entrepreneurs means investors. You can find that word in the second line. So, the description of the new social class of entrepreneurs or investors. So, there are 5. The features of literature during the Victorian age are 5. On the same page, number 6, I'd like to explain this part discussing the social structure of England at that time during the reign of Queen Victoria. Beginning with the highest level in the social structure, after, of course, royalty. So, at the top, on top of this structure, we find, of course, the royalty, this class of kings, queens, princesses, and princes. So, first, number 1, the top level is the royalty class. Was the peerage. So, number 2 of the structure, okay, this kind of social hierarchy, we find the peerage. The peerage is the rank of peers, the rank or the class of peers. The peers are the nobles, noble women and men. Okay, so the rank of peers. The higher of 2 titled classes, I'm reading from the text. The peerage consisted of nobles. So the peerage consists of the peers or the nobles. Who are the peers? They are dukes or dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, and barons. Such titles were usually hereditary. And pay attention to this feature. The royalty was hereditary. The peerage was hereditary. كانت تورث. Okay? Passing from father to the eldest son, and if there were no son, to another male heir. A woman who married a peer gained his status, of course. Below the peerage stood the other titled class, the baroness and the knights. So we have the royalty class, the peerage, and then number 3 and 4, okay, we find baronets and the knights. Indeed, baronets and the knights are the first category of this class we call the gentry. The gentry. So we have the royalty first, the peerage, and then the gentry. The gentry consists of A, okay, baronets and knights. Baronets and knights. These titles, I mean baronets and knights, were more numerous than in the exclusive circle of the peerage, like the titles of the nobles. A baronetcy was hereditary. So this title, being a baronet, was hereditary, transmitted from a generation to another, or from a man to his heir. Unlike the knights, knights ranked lowest in the title scale. Why? Perhaps because their titles were not hereditary. So knighthood was not hereditary whatsoever. So we have the royalty, the peerage or peers, and number 3, the gentry, consisting of A, the baronets, B, okay, the knights. Baronets and knights considered or comprised the top level of the gentry, as I have just mentioned. The gentry are high-class people or non-noble landlords. Below the title gentry stood the squires and other landowners. So, of the gentry class, we have A, the baronets, the knights, the squires, and landowners. The squires and landowners. Who are the squires and other landowners? They had others to work their land. So they didn't work the land themselves. No, they had others to do the job for them. While a person in trade could gain knighthood, tradespeople, this is a very important notice, tradespeople or traders were not favored in the social scheme whatsoever. Okay? So tradespeople or investors or entrepreneurs were considered part of any section of the social class or social hierarchy system. Okay. Below the gentry were farmers. So we have nobility. Okay. So we have the royalty. We have the peerage. Okay. We have the gentry, followed by the lower class. The lower class. Of the lower class, we have subdivisions. One of them is farmers. So below the gentry were farmers or yeomen who worked their own land themselves. Even lower on the social class or the social ladder or hierarchy were servants, agricultural laborers or workers, and industrial workers. Okay, so we have 4 main categories or sections or classes in this society of 19th century England: the royalty, the peerage, the gentry, and finally the working class. The gentry consists of squires and land owners. So the gentry consists of baronets, knights, squires, and landowners, indeed. And finally, number 4, the working class consists of farmers, servants, agricultural laborers, and industrial workers. This is for the type or the description of the social classes we have in England during the 19th century. Of course, we discussed together this part on the social and economic conditions of the Victorian age during the reign of Queen Victoria, and how these conditions, both social and economic, were reflected in the works of many writers, among whom is Charles Dickens. Let's move to discussing the first part of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. But before that, as for the remaining part of the introduction section of our book, I mean the plot and the major themes, you must read them each for himself, each one of you for himself, because they are part and parcel of our curriculum, and they are very easy to understand. I think they don't need any kind of explanation or interpretation or more details. So the plot and the themes are, of course, alongside this part on the Victorian age and its features. The social ranks of this age are all part of our curriculum. Let's move to page number 15, the full text of The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens preface. I have endeavored in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea, which shall not put my readers out of humor. Of course, the key speaker here is Charles Dickens, and he signed down CD, it means Charles Dickens. Which shall not put my readers out of humor with themselves. He means to ridicule themselves with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it their faithful friend and servant, C.D. Charles Dickens. Of course, this novel or novella was written in 1843. Let's move to the first stave because, as I mentioned before during our lecture, the previous one, I guess, that this novella is divided into 5 staves. And instead of chapters, he called them staves to match the title, Christmas Carol. It's a carol. Stave 1, Molly's Ghost. We're going, and this is very important, I want to have your attention to this fact that we're not going to discuss the entire text word by word, okay? But instead, we're going to concentrate on certain parts that relate to our major concerns in this novella. When you start discussing or analyzing a literary work, there are certain features or elements to pay attention for. For example, I mentioned that before as well. The plot, the characters, the type of characterization, the themes, okay, literary symbols, if any. And so we're going to concentrate on certain parts that relate to the structure of the plot, the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution, deniement, or catastrophe in case. So we're going to pick up certain paragraphs, certain quotes or extractions from the text to discuss, because they are more important, as I guess, than others. On page number 16, you can add a title to this page. It is this part of the plot which we call the retrospection. Okay, the exposition, of course, you have this part. The first part of the traditional type of plot, it is the exposition. And the exposition, we have 2 types of an exposition. It may be either a retrospection or a flashback, or sometimes a foreshadowing. Here we have a retrospection or a flashback. So just write on this page, retrospection. Molly was dead to begin with. So the writer gives you an information about what happened before the course of the events he mentions in this novel or novella. Molly was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. So he is asserting the fact that this man is already dead, because he's going to astonish you to surprise you when this ghost appears, when Marley appears again, but in the form of a ghost. So he is asserting the fact that he has already been dead. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Okay. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. We call this, in English literature, we call this a simile or tashbih. Mind. This word means remember. Here, mind means remember. I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery. Of course, this word means small iron tools, ironmongery, uh, in the trade. But the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands, unsacred means unsacred hands, shall not disturb it, or the country is done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Mali was as dead. So this part is, after all, kind of extra assertion of the fact that he has already been dead. He's dead now. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he, the writer means Molly, were partners. So this is the first part of the retrospection we have in this novella. He tells you that he and Scrooge were partners, okay, at work. For I don't know why or how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor. It means of his own will. His sole administrator. And by that word, he means accountant. His sole assign. Assign here, this word means deputy or heir with the H, H-E-I, heir. ورثته أو خلفته. Or as I said, his deputy, نائب عنه. His sole residuary legatee. A residuary heredity is one who inherits what is left in a will. One who inherits what is left in a will. His sole friend and sole mariner. And even Scrooge wasn't so dreadfully cut up by the sad event, but that he was an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and solemnized it with an undoubted bargain made serious or formal. Okay, let's move to page number 17. I think it's page, the opposite page. We have a full detailed description of the protagonist of this novel, who is Scrooge. Scrooge. He describes him by saying, you can find that in paragraph number 2 on page number 17. paragraph الثاني في صفحة 17. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted. Look how he describes Scrooge. Scrooge was a tight-fisted. Of course, the word tight-fisted means stingy or miser. Okay, hand at the grindstone. The grindstone is a stone wheel which helps make a knife sharper. Scrooge is squeezing, again another negative description of Scrooge. It means stingy, a mean man. Wrenching means causing pain. Grasping, it means greedy. Scraping, this word is a negative again description of Scrooge. It means a small amount. clutching, holding tight, covetous. A covetous man is, or woman, of course, is that one who wants others' properties. Old sinner, hard and sharp as a flint. You know, the flint is a type of very hard rock, very hard rock. From which to no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret, he is secret, self-contained, self-absorbed, and solitary as an oyster. So he is paying attention to the fact that this man was, shortly speaking, was a miser, emotionless, and isolated, solitary. So this description means, in short, that he was a miser, بخيل, emotionless or heartless, بلا مشاعر, بلا أحاسيس, and solitary or in solitude, وحيد. The cold within him froze his all features. The inside or the implicit or the internal cold of feelings, okay, was reflected upon his outer or external features. Nibbed his pointed nose, harmed his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, dried or wrinkled his cheek, stiffened his gait. The word stiffen means firmed, stiffened, firmed. His gait, his walking style, the way he walks. Made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly, or means cleverly, in his grating voice. Grating voice, unpleasant voice. He had a bad voice. A frosty rhyme was in his head, and here we have a metaphor. He resembles or likens his hair to frosty rime. Frosty, of course, means frozen. Rime, it means ice coating. So he resembles or likens his hair, his white hair, to frozen, iced, okay, coating. And on his eyebrows as well. His eyebrows were icy or white. He's very old. And his weird chin, his strong or stiff chin. He carried his own low temperature, always. The low temperature, he means his coldness. Coldness, of course, his cold feelings, emotions, always about with him. He eyed his office in the dog days. The dog days, it means the hottest days of the year. The hottest days of the year. And didn't make it hot, though it's 1 degree at Christmas. Of course, it's a reference to how much he is a stingy man or a miser. So this is a brief description to Scrooge's character, both physical and spiritual. Of course, I told you once that the setting of this play is London, and the time setting is Christmas Eve. Let's move to page number 19. Page number 19. The first confrontation is that which occurs between Scrooge and his nephew. Scrooge and his nephew. On page number 19, the second paragraph. This paragraph beginning with, "A Merry Christmas, Uncle." Did you find that? Okay. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Here he gives us what kind of relationship, human relationship, he has with his relatives, his kins. Okay. And this nephew of him represents his relatives. A Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you, cried a cheerful voice. Remember that a moment ago I mentioned that the writer describes his voice as being grating, grating voice, unpleasant voice. Whereas the voice of his nephew, Charles Dickens, characterizes or describes this voice as being cheerful. So we have different descriptions of two different characters, different personalities, of course. Cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation, the first hint he had of his approach. Bah, said Scrooge. Humbug. You know, this word is repeated many times by Scrooge. He repeats that word now and then. And this word humbug means nonsense or nothing. Okay? هي نوع من السخرية. He had so heated himself with rapid walking in the fog, the mist, and frost. Of course, you know the frost is small ice balls or crystals. This nephew of Scrooge's, that he was all in a glow. His face was ruddy. His face was reddish, red, and handsome. His eyes sparkled, not red as those of his uncle. His eyes were sparkling, تتلألأ, and his breath smoked again, gave smoke, of course, as a consequence of this harsh weather outside. Christmas humbug, uncle? He means that, do you call Christmas a humbug? How can you describe Christmas as being a humbug, nonsense, or something trivial, anything or nothing at all? Says Scrooge's nephew. You don't mean that, I am sure. I do, says Scrooge. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? Look how miserable he thinks of Christmas. Christmas to him, Christmas to Scrooge means nothing. Christmas time is supposed to be the time of merriment, fun, enjoyment, but to him it means nothing. It is a humbug. What reason have you to be merry? You are poor enough. How could you be so poor and yet very happy or merry? Come then, returned the nephew gaily. What right have you to be dismal, to be very, very gloomy, in that gloomy state, melancholic? What reason have you to be morose, to be sad or again gloomy? You are rich enough. So this poor orphan of Scrooge is happy despite his being poor, despite his poverty, unlike his uncle, who is rich and yet gloomy person, melancholic, sad person. Scrooge, having no better answer ready on the spur of the moment, said bah again, and followed it up with humbug. He is mocking the words of his nephew. Humbug, it's nonsense again. Don't be cross, uncle, said the nephew. What else can I be? Returned the uncle. When I, turn the page to 20, when I live in such a world of fools as this. Merry Christmas. So he calls, or he describes people who believe in the merriment and the goodness of Christmas time as being fools. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills? Look how he looks upon Christmas. What Christmas time brings to his mind? It's a time for paying bills without money. A time for finding yourself a year older. Look how miserable how disappointing, how melancholic a vision he has of Christmas. A year older, but not an hour richer. A time for balancing your books. And by books, he means his accounting books. And having every item in them through around dozen of months presented dead against you. If I could work my will, if it was my own decision, says Scrooge indignantly, or it means angrily. Every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas, everyone who believes in the merriment of Christmas on his lips, Merry Christmas on his lips, should be boiled with his own pudding, with his own dessert. Look how he hates people who become merry during Christmas. And buried with a stake of holly. Holly is a plant, a type of plant, through his heart. He should be killed. He should be dead for being merry during Christmas. Uncle, pleaded the nephew. He can't believe his ears. Nephew, returned the uncle sternly, keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine. It means that he is so stubborn that he wouldn't change his mind. Keep it, repeated Scrooge's nephew, but you don't keep it. In that way, you don't keep it. Let me leave it alone then, says Scrooge. Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you. Again, a kind of mockery. The same conversation, but we move on to another part of this conversation. Next page 21. At the top part of this page 21, beginning with, don't be angry, uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. So his nephew begins to give, an invitation to his uncle to accompany them on dinner tomorrow. He invites him to visit them. Okay, Scrooge said that he wouldn't see him. Yes, indeed he did. He refuses the invitation. He turns down the invitation. He went the whole length of the expression and said that he would see him in that extremity first. The extremity first, the limit of something. But why? Cried Scrooge's nephew. Why, uncle? Why do you turn down my invitation? Why did you get married? Says Scrooge. Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love, growled Scrooge. To growl is to produce or utter a loud shout. A loud shout. He shouts loudly. Because you fell in love? Like that. As if that were the only one thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. So he even mocks or ridicules or belittles humans' passions, humans' passionate relationships or emotions. As if that were the only thing in the world ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. Good afternoon. Nay, uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now? You know that I have married a long while. But why refusing now? Good afternoon, said Scrooge. Of course, he repeats this phrase, okay? Good afternoon. He wants to end the conversation. I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why can't we be friends? Let alone relatives, being relatives. Just friends. Good afternoon. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute, so stubborn. We have never had any quarrel. Why doing that? To which I have been a party. I have never quarreled with you. Okay? I have never been in conflict with you. But I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, in respect to Christmas. So this man respects Christmas time, unlike Scrooge. And I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So a Merry Christmas Again, so a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon. For the fourth time, good afternoon. And a Happy New Year. Now we move to page number 22. We're going to have a look at another conversation between Scrooge and two gentlemen. Two gentlemen who come to visit Scrooge, but for a different purpose. Not for giving an invitation or saying Merry Christmas, no, but for a different purpose. On page number 22, this part beginning with this lunatic, the top part of page number 22, beginning with this lunatic. In letting Scrooge's nephew out, when he dispels his nephew, when he leaves, his nephew, had let two other people in. Two people visit him. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, to see, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They entered. They had books and papers in their hands. And bowed to him with respect, it means. Scrooge and Marlowe's, I believe, this place, this company, this accounting house, okay? This counting house is its name, okay? Scrooge and Marlowe's, right? Said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? So this gentleman doesn't know that Marley is dead now. Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. Scrooge replied, he died 7 years ago, this very night. We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. Okay? Said the gentleman, presenting his credentials. It certainly was, for they had been two kindred spirits. At the ominous word liberality, Scrooge frowned and shook his head and handed the credentials back. Look how he speaks. This is very important. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, said the gentleman, taking up a pen, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute. Of course, the destitute are poor and homeless people who suffer greatly at the present time. So they are two gentlemen coming for having charity of rich men and dedicate that to the poor, to serve the poor for the sake of the poor, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir. Are there no prisons? Oh my God. This is Scrooge. Are there no prisons? What have the prisons to do with the two gentlemen talking about charity, poor people, rich people? Plenty of prisons, said the gentleman, laying down the pen again. He's surprised. What has this to do with that? And the union workhouses? Are there any union workhouses, Islahiyya or Malaji? So prisons, workhouses? Demanded Scrooge. Are they still in operation, working? They are still, returned the gentleman. I wish I could say they weren't. The man means that he wishes that prisons and workhouses wouldn't be ever there. The treadmill and the poor low are in full vigor, or he means vitality, then, says Scrooge. Both very busy, sir, in operation. Oh, I was afraid. From what you said, at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it. What is the point? You're going to know. Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christmas cheer of mind or body to the multitude, returned the gentleman. A few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink. So the major purpose or objective of their coming to visit Scrooge at his counting house is to have charity, collect money, to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. Okay, we choose this time because it's a time of all others when want and look. Charles Dickens underlines the importance of this word by capitalizing the first letter, want, W, capital. Want is keenly felt, and abundance rejoices. Large quantities of something rejoices, thrives. What shall I put you down for? How much money will you pay, or will you donate for our institution or whatever, for the poor? How much money? So it's nothing. Nothing. He would pay nothing. He would donate nothing. Scrooge replied, You wish to be anonymous? They got him wrong. They thought that he would pay, but he doesn't want his name be mentioned. Okay? No, it wasn't like that. He doesn't want to pay anything. I wish to be left alone. Just leave me alone. I don't want my name to be mentioned in any list or something, or I don't want to pay anything. It shows how cold this scene, it shows how cold his emotions or feelings toward the poor have become. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that's my answer. I want to be left alone. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I don't want lazy people to be merry on my account. I help support the establishments. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. Again, I help to support the establishments. By the word establishments, he means prisons and workhouses by paying taxes to the government. I have mentioned they cost enough. They cost me enough taxes. And those who are badly off, the poor, must go there in prisons and workhouses. Many can go there, and many would rather die. If they would rather die, and this is one of the most important quotations or extracts said or uttered by Scrooge in the entire book, in the entire novel, summarizing everything. If they would rather die, they had better do it. Let them die. If they are poor and can find food and drink, let them die. And decrease, why? And decrease so that, and decrease the surplus population. In that way, if they die, so large numbers of people, poor people, would decrease the surplus population of England or London at the time. Look how he thinks of the people of his own society, how he reacts to their wretched conditions during this season of the year, Christmas. Okay, move to page number 27, 27, we have the beginning of a confrontation between Scrooge and his deceased partner Marley, but this time not physically, but in the form of a ghost. Okay, 27. The first paragraph on page number 27, beginning with Marley's face. Marley's face. It wasn't in impenetrable shadow. It wasn't unseen, so it was seen. It was quite discernible shadow as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light. Of course, before going on, I want to mention that Marley's ghost and the following three ghosts shall visit Scrooge in his abode, in his house or home, but had a dismal light about it, a gloomy light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. You know, the lobster is a sea creature with a hard shell. The lobster is a sea creature with a hard shell. It wasn't angry or ferocious, but looked as Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles, features of a ghost, turned up on its ghostly forehead. The hair of the ghost, the hair was curiously stirred يتحرك بشكل يعني مثير, as if by his breath, or by hot air, and though the eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless, still, very still. His eyes were still, because he's dead. That, and its livid color, its furious color, the furious seen in these eyes, in these still eyes, motionless eyes, made it horrible. So stillness and fury at the same time in both eyes of the ghost. But its horror seemed to be in spite of the face and beyond its control, because he's dead, rather than a part of its own expression. Move to page number 30. Page number 30. The second paragraph on page number 30. Again, we'll have to continue this face-off, this confrontation between Scrooge and the ghost of Marley. Let's begin by the cellar door flew open. We are inside the house of Scrooge, with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards the door. It's humming still. Still, he doesn't believe that this face which he saw in his room moments ago wasn't a real face, or wasn't even a face of a ghost. It's humbug again, it's nonsense. I won't believe it. I won't believe the presence of this ghost. His color changed though, when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door. So the ghost of Marley came. This pronoun refers back to the ghost. The ghost of Marley came to confront Scrooge, and this ghost came out of the door. He just appeared suddenly out of the door and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up. There was a flame of a candle, and it was about to vanish or end, but suddenly it leaped up, okay, sparkled again, as though it cried, I know him. Marley's ghost and fell again. So this is really Molly's ghost. The same face, the very same. Molly in his pigtail. Here we have a description of the appearance of this ghost. Full description. And remember that realistic works of art or novels, like those of Charles Dickens, we have detailed descriptions of characters and surroundings. So we're going to have a description of the ghost of Molly. Molly in his pigtail, in his tied hair, usual waistcoat, the same appearance, as if he were alive. Tights, his stockings. The tights are the stockings of someone. And boots. The tassels. The tassels are hanging threads. Hanging threads. On the latter, bristling on his on his short hair. Bristling, it means short hair. Like his pigtail, and his coat skirts, and the hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped upon his middle. So was there a chain clasped upon his middle? Was there a chain that surrounded the midsection of Molly around his waist? That it chained his waist? Yes, there was. There was a chain of iron around Molly's waist or midsection. It was long. This chain was long and wound about him like a tail. It was wound about his waist, ending in a tail, okay? And it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, it was made of cash. Look at the components of this chain. It was made of cash, boxes, keys, padlocks, it means locks, ledgers. The ledgers are accounting books, deeds, and heavy purses, صرات من المال ثقيلة, wrought in steel. All of these are built or manufactured of steel. So they have the form of cash, boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses, but made of steel. His body was transparent. يبقى خلي بالك من وصف the chain. The description of the chain is very important. As for his body, it was transparent, كان شفاف, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the two buttons on his coat behind. Okay? Move to page number 33. They began to talk, to have a conversation. Find this part on page number 33, at the bottom part of the page number 33. I wear the chain I forged in life. Here we find an explanation of this chain. This chain forged of cash, boxes, ledgers, keys, padlocks, and purses. What was it? He says, Molly speaking, I wear the chain I forged in life. I wear the chain that I made for myself during my life. Replied the ghost, I made it link by link, and yard by yard. I girded it, I fastened it, surrounded it, fastened it tightly, of my own free will. And of my own free will I wore it. I did that to myself. Is its pattern strange to you? Is this strange? Is, or are in this case, are the components of this chain very strange to you? You know them quite well. You know the cash, purses, padlocks, county books, and so and so and so. So this is speech about the chain, and that he forged it for himself and surrounded his waist with that tightly, fastened it tightly around his waist, his body, is a kind of remorse. نادم على ما فعل. Okay? Or, of course, Scrooge trembled. He trembled more and more. Or would you know, pursued the ghost, the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored in it since. Yani, it means you did the same. You have taken the same route as I have done in the past. Is a ponderous chain, is a slowly moving chain. Ponderous means slowly moving because it's very, very, very heavy. Scrooge glanced about him on the floor in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable, 6 feet. Of course, a fathom is a unit of depth, or a depth unit. يعني وحدة لقياس العمق يعني. And it equals 6 feet. 6 feet in depth. Iron cable. But he could see nothing. There weren't any cables or any chains around or surrounding or about to endanger Scrooge, because he was still alive. He didn't experience what this man had experienced after death. And now he comes, the ghost, he comes with remorse. So it's a kind of, an alarm set for Scrooge to not do the same. Thank you, and see you next lecture, inshallah.